Hello there. I'm autistic, and yep, I'm going there. Alright. I know what you're thinking. What are you talking about? So, allow me to explain how I'm going to approach a topic like this. Essentially, this video that you're watching is going to be split into two parts. Not like a two-parter, like there's not a second video coming or whatever. Just this video is being two different subjects at the same time. But I'm going to do one then the other. Because they both kind of fall in line with what this title is encompassing or whatever. Number one. Why do autistic people like anime? Yeah, I'm really going there. And number two, there is credible evidence to suggest that every single anime character to ever exist, asterisk, is autistic. And here's why. Yeah, I know I make it sound like absolute trash clickbait, but I mean, it worked on you, so get wrecked. I want to tackle these subject matters because it's kind of one of those things that everyone just kind of knows but feels weird to say because it's a little rude sometimes, depending. So, like, I'm just gonna rip off the Band-Aid and be like, alright, why is this a thing? I don't think I need to tell you, if you've been online for any considerable amount of time, that some fans of anime can be very apparently neurodivergent. And have you ever stopped to wonder why that is? Like, what is it about anime specifically that just, like, grabs us, like, at, like, I don't know where they're grabbing, but they're grabbing you. Honestly, depending on the kind of anime, I know exactly where they're grabbing. But that's besides the point. I think it's very fair to say that anyone who does grow up with neurodivergency of any degree tend to be outcasted. And outcasts tend to have to find solace in stuff that others don't. If that makes sense. So basically what I mean is, like, you have what's mainstream, and that's all for the normies, right? Like, that's all for, like, the neurotypical, like, the most boring, like, basically just everyday, every person stuff. Like, you have your Seinfeld, your Grey's Anatomy, I guess. I don't fucking know. I don't watch normie shit. I guess superheroes kind of constitute that now, even though they didn't before. It's weird, man. I'm not giving a goddamn history lesson here. My point is that you have the stuff that everyone likes, and then you have the niche. The stuff that, like, no one wants to touch. Now, this can be due in part to a few factors. However, for the purposes of this discussion, that being anime, it's mostly due to cultural. So, obviously, Japanese media is Japanese media, and that in itself means that it's not, I would say American, but English-based is more appropriately the way to put it. Typically, anything from another culture is going to be viewed differently than it would be in the culture it comes from. Obviously, people who watch Japanese media are like, oh, that's Japanese, that's what I'm used to, that's normal, and whatever. Meanwhile, like, let's take English-speaking territories, like, primarily English-speaking territories, like, despite them outputting, like, extravagantly more products than Hollywood could ever dream of, I don't really see anyone talking, like, in English-speaking territories at least, about, like, most Bollywood films. Like, I know there's that one that, like, got nominated for an Oscar recently. I think it was like RRR or something like that. But like other than that, like the only other time I've heard of like Indian-based media is the shit posting on their editing styles. But like that's just how the culture likes their media. Like there's nothing wrong with that, but it can be very jarring for like anyone outside of that culture. That being said, you don't really see anyone coming up in arms, like, instead of, like, weeaboos, they're, like, South Asian aboos? I don't fucking know, man! My point is that anime, despite being a different culture, grabs them specifically. So, it could have been from, like, literally anything else. What makes anime set itself apart so much? Well, for starters, the animation has always just been stellar. Like, no matter what anime you're watching, if it's Japanese media, animation is going to pop off, no matter what. Most of the time, the actual stuff that gets, like, a lot of coverage is, like, the shonen stuff. Like, the stuff made to encapsulate a lot of action. Like, Dragon Ball, One Piece, Naruto, like, all that. Like, all that stuff. That's just very action-packed. But if that's the case, why watch that when you could watch any other action stuff? Well, some would argue it's also due to the way the characters are written, and they relate to these characters a lot more. Now you see why I'm talking about two different things. They're converging. But I'll get to that in a minute. Got the stupid fucking camera. Okay. It's hot in here too. God damn, I hate the summer. Anyway, so yeah, all that could be like very enticing and whatever, but what really, in my experience, draws anime towards the neurodivergent is the pure fucking ridiculousness that it can go up to. The absolute incredible imagination that some of these like creators have with their works is absolutely off its fucking shit. Like, if you have no experience with, like, a certain property, like, if you've never seen Demon Slayer in your fucking life, and you're just, like, seeing some kid with a boar head or whatever, you're just like, huh? Like, okay, I guess. That's the thing, is, like, anime is so extravagantly larger than life that it makes everything else feel mundane by comparison. Like, it just doesn't feel as imaginative or inspiring or colorful, I guess. I don't know. So while there are a lot of arguments as to why, like, anyone from America would watch that en masse, that's probably my best answer as to why. Because those with, like, autism or even ADHD, like, tend to crave stuff that's, like, over the top, ridiculous, fast paced, because, you know, it's the most satisfying for the way that their brains take information. I myself have not experienced a lot of anime. I've seen the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Series in its entirety. And some time ago I saw Soul Eater. That one was good. And some other... What the hell was it called? It was some comedy... romance comedy anime about, like, a boy club. Something boy club. It was just, like, some girl that looked androgynous enough to, like, dress up like a boy and just, like, be a host in a host club. I need to look that up. I'll put a poster on screen if I find it. But other than those three examples, I've never really watched any anime from, like, start to finish. I saw some episodes of Naruto, though, as a kid. And, like, obviously I watched some Pokemon. That's really it, honestly. Like, my experience with anime is very bare bones. It's so weird, because, like, it was so tied to nerdy culture that back in the day you'd be beat up if you, like, admitted you watched that shit. Nowadays, I feel embarrassed to say I've never seen Dragon Ball Z. Like that's kind of where we're at right now. Or at least with the people we surround ourselves with. But then it begs the question, what is it about the characters in these shows that make them so relatable for their audience? Wow! I know I've made this argument a couple times before, very baselessly, but now that I have like an actual like focus on the topic, I can actually like have it stand on its own. So if you will bear with me, I will now break down as to explain why almost every single anime character you've ever met in your fucking life could constitute autistic if pulling the right strings. You see, there's a trend when it comes to writing an anime character, especially one from like a franchise who doesn't have like a lot of depth. Stuff that's like meant to be like surface level, like fun, like bare minimum narrative to keep the plot along, just to have an excuse to like punch each other. Obviously not anime is like that, and like there is like some like narrative arcs that could reach some emotional peaks if it's done right or whatever. I know you guys don't think about it being that way, but technically you could constitute Sonic as anime-esque, and like that story is absolutely fucking bare bones, but they try to have some like interesting lore and whatever. Like I know people praise like the Omega storyline from Adventure and whatever, but I don't think anyone's going to like play Forces or Generations and go, oh this narrative, that's peak. I actually know nothing about Generations story. I could be completely fucking off, honestly. Not to say anything about the gameplay, just narrative-wise, that's all. Like, obviously, Dragon Ball has, like, characterization and depth to a degree, but let's be real. You're watching Dragon Ball to see them punch each other. That's really it. And the screen porn. The screen porn is very, very much apparent. So, if the narrative department doesn't have too much going on, how do they characterize their characters? Like, you'd think there would have to be, like, some way to, like, write a compelling character without having to delve too much into expository dialogue, despite them doing that anyway. Well, Japan has this one secret tip that Americans hate, and basically, you're dumb. And basically, you're fucking stupid. Turns out all you really need to make a compelling character is to just give them a single character trait and have them go on a journey about that character trait, or just have them completely be about that character trait. It is very one note. I know I'm not trying to like I'm aware I'm overgeneralizing like an entire like culture's worth of media, but like I don't know, man, like that's at least when I look at like Western animation, like or like non-Japanese animation, like there tends to be like some depth with like the characters from the like the new Spider-Man the new Spider-Man film is out, like as of me filming this, and like I don't have to see that movie to know that it tackles a lot of complexity with its characters and its narrative. Like it is a very story focused experience, but it does not skimp out on animation despite that. Even something for like the Lego movie, which is like a commercialized product, they still like had a nice narrative go along that had some characters with some depth, that had some arcs. Like that was a satisfying narrative experience. Usually when giving the summary of a film or a cartoon or anything really, usually you just have to describe it very simply. But as anime tends to be adaptations of manga, which thrive off of its simplicity, where you could just describe the story on the back of the book in order to entice readers, because that's the way the market works, you don't really have to do much with that. Just collect the MacGuffins. Become the greatest in the world. It's the simplest motivations that, like, literally everyone can relate to, because they all want that, dude. Like, we all want to be the best at something. We all want to complete a collection of something. Like, you see that shit right there? Like, that's a collection I have. The point is, the plots and the characters themselves thereof become very simplified. What does this have to do with autism? I mean, typically speaking, ironic, right? we tend to focus on like one thing hyperactively at a time. There's a term, hyperfixation. You've probably seen me throw it around occasionally, but it tends to be where we have like two moods about something. It's either I could not give less of a shit, or this is everything my world revolves around, and I will drop it when it no longer suits me. But oh my god, it was so much fun when it was! I can say that as a kid, I used to be like really into Yu-Gi-Oh, for example, and I just recently got back into it thanks to Master Duel. In fact, I made a fun little video guide about Earth machines, if you're curious, but that's besides the point. I had a hyperfixation as a kid, lost interest, dropped it, now I'm back into it, and now it's literally all I can fucking think about, dude. Like, unironically, like, it has been retaking over my life again. I found some fucking cards in my goddamn, like, house somewhere recently, and like, I'm just like, damn, that might be worth something. I spent the entire day yesterday, as of recording this, just price checking every fucking card in that box. And like, I'm not even done. There's like so many more cards that I'm not even done yet. Like, I put on a playlist that's like 4 hours long. I like swept through that like it was nothing. My point is that when it comes to hyperfixating and only really giving a shit about a single thing, you see where I'm going with this, right? Yes, every single fucking anime character hyperfixates like shit, like it's all they care about. It's just one goddamn thing. That's all their character is. It is ridiculous. Goku, he just wants to be the world's greatest fighter. He wants to be the strongest in the fucking world. That's all he cares about. Literally is a fucking dense goddamn piece of shit, but oh, if it's strong enough that he can fight it, oh boy. Ash wants to be a Pokemon master. He doesn't want to catch them all. He just wants to be the strongest. Whoa. Even in stuff like Yu-Gi-Oh! With like side characters, like, tell me one thing about Mako Tsunami that doesn't involve the ocean or his father. Genuinely, on God, tell me one fucking thing that does not relate to those 2 points. You see what, like, I know that guy was like a castaway. Shut up. Like, it makes sense in world why he's that way. My point still stands that, you know, our interests don't really fall into our lap, admittedly, you know, so there's your counterpoint. It's gotten so fucking ridiculously monotonous to a point that we have actual goddamn fucking terminology for character archetypes in that media specifically. Like shotos, tsunderes, any anime character you could think of, there is a word to categorize what the fuck they are. I'm not gonna sit here and act like I am like a voice for everything that is anime. Like I said, I'm not necessarily one who has engaged with the medium all that much. But I have engaged with a lot of Japanese products regardless. Bruh, fucking, they're, like, I know they try to put, like, global standard shit into, like, their products, aka Americanization, whatever. But, like, it's still Japanese at its roots. Like, you go into Splatoon or Animal Crossing or even, like, Legend of Zelda, you'll find, like, plenty of Japanese iconography or, like, familiarities or whatever. Even in, like, Pokemon. Like, literally, like, you've probably noticed that, like, the 3 characters that I've spoken about in this series were all from Japanese video games. That's not a coincidence, dude. To be fair, it is possible that these creators themselves that are, like, designing, writing, drawing, all these different factors, like, they could be neurodivergent themselves, and so they're just putting in their experiences that relate to them, which happen to relate to us, and so on and so forth. It's cyclical. But that doesn't really change anything now, does it? My argument still stands. For some characters, it's status. Oh, I want to be king of the pirates. Oh, I want to be the next Hokage. For some people, it's just like, what they personally want. Like, oh, I must learn my past and discover my destiny or something. Stupid, who cares? And even for like rival or villain characters, it could just be pity. It could just be pitiful. Just like, I want to prove myself, or it's like, I want what's rightfully mine, or whatever. It's just single concept mindsets that these characters embody that make it easy to follow along despite its complexity when zoomed out. The point is that these narratives are easy to follow. With Western media, there's a lot of subtlety and nuance that goes into the enjoyment of those properties. Like, yes, it's a lot more fun when you break it down and realize all that crap, but like, when it comes to storytelling in a visual media, like, a lot goes into the show don't tell sort of thing. And while that can be true to an extent with Japanese media, it's not really necessary as much to enjoy it, because a lot of the stuff is expository. A lot of it is making sure that you fully understand motivations, character, all of that. Nothing is left up to interpretation in between the cracks. Again, depending on the kind of show you're watching. Like, I'm sure when it comes to, like, slice of life stuff, it's probably a lot more nuanced. But at least from my experience, what I've seen people talk about from clips I've seen, like, it really feels like anime doesn't really leave too much up for interpretation. It's really very blunt. I don't really think those people are going to enjoy stuff like Wes Anderson or something. Even, like, nerdy stuff like Star Wars or Transphobia. Like, you can, at the very least, like, get a general understanding of its world and its characters and still be in the know. But there is still nuance to the stuff that goes on that is worth looking into, and what the neurotypical can look into, we can't really as easily. And it's not to say that those with ASD are simpletons, simple-minded, or whatever. It's more so of we take in information differently, and so the more that's spelt out, the more we get and feel comfortable with. It's just a different form of storytelling that leads it for us to be able to better comprehend and better have a better experience with. Tying it back to the first topic. Woo! I love formatting! I love making videos! Hi. This is awkward. In my original recording, I completely forgot to talk about probably the most important portion of why I make these videos in the first place. So, I'm here now to do that. Was not ready to be on camera, so excuse the impromptu setup. So, the reason why I never addressed it is because I feel like it was fairly obvious, but considering the fact of what I've already addressed, I think it's fair to ask that question. So, is assuming every anime character ever to be autistic a positive form of representation? No! No, it is not! Not in any degree! At all. Probably ableist. Also, probably a little racist. But, I'm gonna ignore those factors for this discussion for the moment. But I think it's fair to assume that categorizing an entire specificality of art form to have all of their characters to be of a certain way, it's pretty generalizing. It's not good. It's not a healthy way of thinking. I need to emphasize the purpose of me talking about this is merely a thought exercise and to really express a point of homogenization within an industry, but that's a whole other topic. I'm not even gonna delve deeper than that. Are there cases to be made with a lot of characters? Yeah, my previous videos are proof of that. But, like, the fact that I can make this connection with a lot of anime characters alone does not constitute the fact that it is, like, fair representation at all. Like, for, like, all my other characters, I've specified, like, oh, it's not just, like, one thing that points them towards that direction. It's, like, all these different facets working together to make one character that exhibits these traits that just doesn't really seem to let up on that depiction. That's what I found so strong about a character like Nimona. But, like, it kind of feels like it lessens the impact if I were to say, like, oh, every character in Pokemon's autistic. Because, like, I mean, I don't really view Cynthia that way, I guess, is one example. I don't really see Brock that way, or Misty. To be fair, we don't really get to see much of them in games, at least. In games. But, like, just off of what we're given, like, fucking Lieutenant Surge? Nah. He's just a Republican. No, I can't. Cut that. And that's just one example of one franchise. I do not think it is a positive form of representation to assume that of every single freaking character you ever come across at all. I just think it's very funny. Anyway, that's it for me. Have fun with past me for seeing this video out. Bye. I think I'm gonna leave it off there, because anything I could say would be repetitive. Anyway, yes, so thank you for watching. What do you think? Am I full of shit? I'm probably full of shit, but I can't help but just, like, acknowledge this, right? Like, it feels like it has to be said at some point. Even if, like, I'm wrong, a discussion around it is probably warranted. Because, like, I guarantee you, I'm not the only one that feels this way about this media, right? I don't know. I feel like there's definitely something worth talking about here, and I'd love to hear your two cents about it. If you yourself are interested in Yu-Gi-Oh!, I could leave you with my video on profiling the Earth Machine playstyle, if you're interested in that. Otherwise, I could leave you with a playlist of the other episodes of Akawa, and you can check those out at your leisure. That being said, thank you for watching, like, subscribe, all that dumb crap, and I'm so fucking lucky my parents aren't here. Holy shit. Well, apparently, Japan has this one secret trick that